Hello everybody and welcome. This is Not a Pro Gardener here, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. We're going to be seed starting our cold season crops today, and I'm going to take you along with the process of with the steps that I usually use whenever I've begun seed starting. I'm just going to kind of talk about it like a blanket statement, tell you about my steps that I used, and then we're going to seed start some cold season crops, and I'll let you know what varieties I have and what's going into these trays. So first, let's start on talking about the steps that I use to start seed starting. First, you want to get the seed started at the right time, right? So you want to find out your plant hardiness zone, and mine is 6B. And some of this depends on day length, because there could be somebody in zone 6B that has a different day length, is different than I do, so they might have different situations. But we are in zone 6B. Then you want to find out your average last frost date for spring, and that is around, I think it's April 10th. So then you want to seed start per variety of crop, per family. Like tomatoes would be about 6 to 8 weeks before that frost date that we have found out for our plant hardiness zone, April 10th. It'll be about 6 to 8 weeks before that date. That's when you want to seed start, plus or minus a week. You know, depending on how cold it is outside, you can make that call to do it a week later or a week before that. You know, it depends on your decision. But this is the soonest possible to figure out when you could also do it 2 weeks after that. Let's say you couldn't get to it and you want to seed start it 2 weeks after that. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Then, let's say for the peppers, you got 8 to 12 weeks from that date. And for my brassicas, I usually do 4 to 6 weeks from that date. So that way you can kind of figure out a basis for how long before that date you want to seed start everything. That's for the soonest you can possibly get them out. Then you want to use the appropriate containers for seed starting. They need to be about 2 to 3 inches deep at least. It could be a lasagna style tray that I've used in one of my other videos. It could be a gallon jug for milk that you cut the top off of, but you got to make sure you poke holes in the bottom. You definitely need drainage holes in the bottom of your trays. That's something that you have to have, otherwise you might have root rot or disease issues spreading on the tops because all the moisture, and you don't want that. Then you need to prepare a sterile seed starting mix, and you can buy this at the big box stores. I've used quite a few different ones, but I've always seemed to have trouble with fungus gnat eggs when it bags. So the way you can mix your own is what I do. I mix my own seed starting mix because I seed start lots of things. So you come up with some perlite, some vermiculite, and some peat moss. That's the 3 basic ingredients to making a good seed starting mix. And you want to sift that and get it all broke up, get all the wood chips and stuff out of it. Then you want to boil some water to sterilize it. I usually get mine up to a rolling boil and mix it in with my seed starting mix before I put it in this tray. And then it's already semi-moist, so watering it will be easier because peat moss is kind of hydrophobic. It doesn't want to take up as much water initially, but it'll eventually soak in. So the next step you got is seed starting. So you pick out your varieties, and usually the manufacturer will have instructions for planting on the back of the seed packs, and you usually want to follow those. So let's say it tells you to plant your seed a ½ inch deep in your seed cell. That's what you do. Then you could dust the top of this after it's all filled with all your seeds with some seed starting mix, or you could, what I like to do is I use perlite, and usually perlite's that white stuff that's inside the seed cells in your starting mix, and white little rocks. It's volcanic glass, and you want to take that, you can buy it in bags with just perlite, and you cover the tops of these seeds, and that also helps to keep the fungus gnats from emerging and coming out and laying more eggs and causing lots of problems. It's a bad deal. So you want to take every step you can to prevent that. So in my 3 years of doing this, I had a bad experience with some mix that I didn't sterilize that said it was sterilized from the big box store. and I had lots of fungus gnats hatching and causing problems. So mixing my own saves me lots of money, and I have a video on that if you want to check that out. But you want to boil water, dump it in here, sterilize it. I got a video on that as well. You want to sterilize it, and then you want to top it with perlite. Your seeds, after your seeds are all in there, top it with perlite, and that'll help prevent fungus gnats from causing you problems in the future. Then the next step you got is to water, feed, and repeat. So let's say all my seeds have sprouted. So let's say I get all this topped off with perlite after I put all my seeds in here. You want to top water initially. This is the way I do it. I top water initially till my seeds roots reach the bottom of these cells underneath these trays. You can lift it up, look at the drainage hole. You'll see their roots coming through. Then you know you can bottom water, and that's why I have this other tray underneath, so I can bottom water these once the roots reach the bottom. If you're just bottom watering and it just doesn't get all the way up to that seed to soak it, then you're going to have bad germination. You really need moist seed starting mix to keep that seed moist so it'll germinate. And then once the plant's roots reach the bottom of the cells, then you know you can bottom water, which is the way I do it. You can do it any way you like. I'm just taking you along with my experience. Then, let's say your plants have gotten bigger. The next thing you need to do is feed them. Let's say they start getting slightly yellow. Maybe you haven't been overwatering them, so they get slightly yellow from nutrient deficiency. So you want to water them with a water-soluble fertilizer, usually a 1-1-1 NP and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's what you want to use, a water-soluble fertilizer, and it needs to be dissolved, the water-soluble fertilizer, to feed them so the plants can take up those nutrients that they need. And you need to wait till your plants have true leaves showing, which is the second set of leaves after they sprout. Then you know you can fertilize them and everything will be alright. Usually about every 2 weeks I fertilize them as needed. If they need it more, you know, you can usually make that call by looking at them and using your know-how from experience. If you don't have experience, you're just going to have to play it by ear and try new things. Next up is you need light. Once that seed emerges from your seed starting mix, you definitely need light. I recommend a 5000K daylight shop light. Usually you can get them at the big box store. They're relatively cheap. And you want to keep them about 2 inches above the soil. And then once your plants sprout, you want to keep them at least 2 inches above the top of your sprouted plants. And that will give them enough light to function until you take them outside. Now let's say you're going to use a window. Your window light, it needs a southern facing exposure from the sun in order to give your plants enough light. You need to make sure that they don't get leggy, because they will get leggy if you don't have enough light. And you'll know it when you see it. They get real spindly, long, and swaying. You'll know when you see it. Next, you want to harden your indoor seed starts or acclimate them, your transplants, to the outdoor temperatures, because they're not used to the sun. They're definitely not used to no wind, and they will get burnt if you just put them outside straight from indoors. So the way I do this is I got 2 options here. Once they emerge from the seed cells, I can take them outside every day for an hour, 15 minutes, depending on if it's below 45 degrees, because you don't want to do this if it's 45 degrees or less out. It definitely needs to be above that. So you don't want to leave them out there all day, but you need to take them out there for around an hour after they emerge, right as soon as they emerge, an hour a day, till you transplant them. And then once it gets warm enough, you can just leave them outside and water them outside and all that stuff. You don't need them inside. Next I got is, let's say I grow them indoors. They get 4 weeks old and they are plenty big enough to start going outside. So I know I need to start getting them acclimated outside. And this is the schedule I use. I got a 7-day schedule. It's 15 minutes first day, 15 to 20 minutes the next day, 45 minutes the third day. 4th day, I have about an hour. 5th day, an hour and a half. 6th day, 2 hours. And then 3 hours on the 7th day. And then you should be good to stick them outside in a greenhouse or on a table, wherever you got. Then they should be perfectly fine. And that is the steps that I used whenever I first began learning how to do all this. Just passing it on to you. Let me know in the comments below if you have any more information about these things that you want to share with me. I would be happy to hear it. Alright, for the sake of the video, to make it faster, I already filled this with seed starting mix and dibbled my holes. We're going to go ahead and get my varieties out, and I'm going to show you one of my storage solutions that I have for my seeds that I'm quite fond of. And I'll show you the varieties I got, and we'll go over that and start seed starting. Okay, what we got here is I got a binder with some card sleeves in a Ziploc bag. They are for photos. And I really never liked having a bin that I just stuck all my seeds in, so having this really is enjoyable to me because I can sit here and I can look through what I got. No more searching for everything. You can alphabetize it if you want, or set it sections for varieties specific, like brassicas, alliums, nightshades, etc., etc. But so far, where we are at are the brassicas, cold season crops. So, real easy to find. Now I just got to take them out. Last year I grew this twister cauliflower, and I was pretty pleased with it. Got a few seeds left over. I'm going to go ahead and use these first. And it says on the back of the seed pack, planting depth, seed spacing, row spacing, days to maturity. And usually you want to follow those instructions. I usually just put them about, it says 1/4 inch deep. So, just going to make sure none of these are too deep. Now cauliflower, they're heavy feeders, so you really want to make sure you fertilize these well. I usually spoon fed them organic fertilizer and some 20-20-20 chemical fertilizer last year. Throughout, like every 2 weeks to 3 weeks, I would always spoon feed them just a little bit with some Micro Boost from Haas Tools. And they did really, really well last year. I had plenty. This year, I want to grow 3 30-foot rows, 3 different kinds, and I'm going to blanch and freeze a lot of this. So if you see me planting so much, that's why. A lot of this stuff is planning on us growing this for our food for the future. We're going to blanch a lot of it, freeze a lot of it, and hopefully it all makes pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and start with this twister cauliflower, and then I'll seed start the rest of this, and I'll see you when I'm done. If you get more than one seed in each cell, it's not a big deal. You can always thin it out later. Okay, that's it for these. Next will be this new one that I have not tried yet. It's the cheddar. I'm really fond of how it packaged. Next up, I got the cheddar cauliflower. This is a new one that I haven't tried yet, and we're going to go ahead and get these put in the tray. Next up, we got the graffiti cauliflower. It says about 1/4 inch deep for these, so we're going to make sure none of these dibbles are too... If you haven't grown your own cauliflower, I'd say you probably ought to give it a try. It is definitely a fun experience, especially tasting the first one out of the garden. It's a good feeling when you grow all the vegetables that you eat for a year in your garden. Alright, next up we got these Jade Cross Brussels sprouts. They say planting depth about 1/4 inch as well, so we're going to make sure these ain't too deep as well. I grew my own Brussels sprouts last year, but they was pretty small, and we didn't crop none of the leaves off because I didn't know what I was doing yet. But watching some videos on Lazy Dog Farm and looking at the seed packs, looks like they cropped the bottom leaves off and left some leaves on the top. So we're going to try that method this year to see if we can grow some bigger Brussels sprouts. But another thing is Brussels sprouts are really heavy feeders, almost like cabbage and corn. They really need a lot of fertilizer to get them get them up and going. So hopefully we can grow some really good Brussels sprouts this year. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a challenge though, because we're growing most of this stuff all organic this year. Well, not most of it. All of this stuff we're growing all organic this year. We ordered some fertilizer from a company, all organic this year, so let's see how it goes. I'm pretty excited about that. Got those topped off. Now we got this Caribbean Queen cabbage, and this is a flatter head type cabbage, and I have not grown one of these before, so I'm looking forward to trying these as well. It says about a 1/4 inch depth, so we're going to make sure these aren't too deep. These instructions on the back are what I was talking about. You always want to double check these, make sure you're doing everything like you're supposed to, because otherwise seeds won't come up, or they'll be delayed from coming up, or just won't come up at all because you got them too deep. That's something you got to pay attention to. And cabbage, we usually don't do a 30-foot row of this because it's kind of hard to eat it all. So I'm probably going to try to succession plant this. Maybe if it goes well, hopefully. If not, I'll try to grow some more in the fall, maybe just for fun. There goes one. Okay, we got this seed tray filled with all the varieties that we want. Now we're going to get some perlite, top it off. So I'll be right back. Alright, so this is the perlite that I'm talking about. This is what it looks like. Alright, what we got going next for this next tray is Green Magic broccoli, the Eastern Magic broccoli from Johnny Seeds, the Red Bull Brussels sprouts, and these Navun yellow rutabagas from Baker Creek, along with the Chinese red meat radish from Baker Creek. So I'm going to go ahead and get these seeds started, and then we'll top them with perlite and get them watered in. Alright, the next thing we got to do is we're going to top this with some perlite. Now that we got it topped, we're going to water it in the same as the other one. Lightly spray it just to get it all covered. That way it kind of sticks down. Then you want to make sure you water it in very well. That is very important. Now that we got all our cold season crop seeds started, that only leaves out the Brussels, or that only leaves out the beets, and I might either direct seed those or try to do those in the fall this time, so we'll see what happens. But thanks for sticking with me, and this is how we do our seed starting method. And if you like the videos, don't forget to hit that bell button, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and check out my other videos whenever they're coming out.